Labrīt visiem! Esam sveicināti visā Latvijā, Rīgā, Horvātijā, Norvēģijā, Igaunijā, kur mūs redz šodien. Un būs arī interesants prezentācijas Eiropa ceļā uz klimatneitralitāti. Šodien ir iespēja enerģētikas plāniem par piemēriem, kas jau veiksmīgi realizēti, par vecām ēkām, kas ir pārādušās līdz nepazīšanai, par to, vai valsts var atteikties pilnībā no fosilās enerģijas apkurei. Arī par to šodien būs tādi interesanti piemēri, tos jūs visi dzirdēsiet, un par to, kā realizēt plānus, jaunus plānus tepat Latvijā, kādi projekti iespējami, kādas naudas finansējumi, piesaisti instrumenti iespējami dažādos virzienos. Tie ir šobrīd atvērti un vēl publiski diskutējami. Mēs šobrīd redzam, ka esam 48 dalībnieki, diezgan daudz šādam, vai ne, Covid nogurušam un nogurdinošam laikam, esam labā formā. Es domāju, šis būs lielisks seminārs, interesants seminārs ar daudz labām idejām. Gribu iepazīstināt uzreiz ar organizatoriem, kas ar mani, moderātoru Gundaru Rēderu, sazinājās jau ļoti labu laiku iepriekš, tā kā jūs saprotat, kāds darbs te ir ieguldīts, lai visu noorganizētu. Inga Kreitsmane, Zemgales reģionālās enerģētikas aģentūras direktore. Sveiki, Inga!
Labrīt visiem!
Labi. Labrīt, Ingai! Signe Mārtiņkrista, Zemgales reģionālās enerģētikas aģentūras projektu vadītāja. Labrīt!
Labrīt visiem! Paldies!
Un skaņas pārbauda arī pie reizes ļoti labi, visi strādā. Nika Kotoviča, pilsētu plānošanas eksperti no Rīgas enerģētikas aģentūras.
Jā, labrīt visiem!
Labrīt! Tā kā brīnišķīgi, tūlīt sāksies arī prezentācijas un savu redzējumu izklāst. Tas būs apmēram katram 15 runātājiem 15 minūtes, 5 minūtes būs jautājumiem. Ja jūs vēlaties klausīties, pirmie runātāji būs angļu valodā, jūs vēlaties to dzirdēt latviski, jūs redzat, ekrāna apakšējā malā ir tāda podziņa interpretation. Uz to uzspiežot ir jāparādās 3 variantiem, latviski, angliski un off. Ja jūs gribat tulkojumu angļu runātājiem, ejiet uz latviešu kanālu un klausieties tādā veidā. Savukārt chatrūmā jūs varēsiet uzdot jautājumus viesiem, kas mums runās. Tad viesi šobrīd pirmie būs, kā jau teicu, no ārzemēm. Un jautājums uzdodiet labāk angliski. Ja gluži nevarat, uzdodiet arī latviski, mēs mēģināsim iztulkot pa ceļam un uzdot. Un es ceru, ka visiem jautājumiem arī pietiks laika. Ja nē, tad centīsimies atbildēt ar nobīdi. Vēlāk šis viss pasākums tiks arī ierakstīts, tā kā neko neviens garām nepalaidīs. Ļoti jauki. And now I'm switching on English, and I would like to welcome everyone in this webinar on the way to climate neutrality. I welcome our guests from Norway, Croatia, Estonia. I wish a good day for everyone, and we could start, I think, with Norway. This time, Norway we can consider as a front runner in energy and climate sector. And I would like to give the floor to Guri Buge. Hi, Guri. The climate and energy advisor of Viken municipality. This is a municipality that surrounds the capital Oslo. Please, Guri, floor is yours.
Thank you very much. So I will try to share my screen. So, thank you very much for having me here today. I would, of course, much prefer to be in Latvia in person, but such are the times. My name is Guri Buge. I'm a climate coordinator for the County Council of Viken. I'm sure you all know Norway, and Viken is located down in the south, surrounding Oslo. We have about 50 municipalities in our region, and they are ranging from in the south We have summer tourism, bio-based industries. In the north, we have mountain regions with ski destination and plenty of hydropower production. The largest municipalities, such as Hor and År, only have 1,000 or 2,000 inhabitants, while the larger number of people live closer to Oslo. In total, we have 1.2 million inhabitants. All the municipalities in Viken have CCAPs, climate and energy plans. Some are old and outdated, but everyone has something. The region has 2 relatively new CCAPs on a regional level, and both are made in close cooperation with the municipalities. The CCAP for Akershus, the middle area, can be used by the municipalities as a basis for simpler local action plans. All the legal basis that they need, the statistics, the theoretical background, etc., can be found in the regional plan. And the municipalities then only need to focus on finding local measures. It is, of course, 100% voluntary to use the regional plan in this way. The municipalities are free to do all the work themselves, but if they use the regional CCAP, they save time, they save resources, and they have more room to decide local focus areas and goals. The CCAP from Østfold, the southernmost region, covering 12 municipalities, is made through the Pentahelic project. This CCAP is written together with municipalities. And we had one municipality leading a working group of transport, another one focused on agriculture, one of my colleagues led a working group of industry, etc. And all the text, statistics, and illustrations have been made available for all the municipalities, and you can find much of it on the Pentahelic's webpage, free to use. So we have different ways to cooperate with the municipalities, but it's very important for us to do it on an equal level as much as possible. The Norwegian system is based on a local democracy. This division of power goes back to the thing structure of the Viking Age. And we only suffer with the national level because it's necessary. Everything that can be decided on a local level should be decided there. If it's not suited for the local level, we move one level up to the regional level. And this is the case for public transport and secondary school. And the very few things that are not suited for local or regional level are moved to a national level. But at the same time that the municipalities have a lot of power, they do not have many resources. So good local climate planning is essential if we in Norway should ever hope to battle climate change. Local climate planning is also mandated by law. We have to have climate plans and CCAPs, and we have to improve them at least every 4 years. The Norwegian national climate policy has a lot of room for improvement. Some measures are good, such as taxing fossil-fueled cars at very high rates and banning fossil fuels for heatings. But other topics are not good for polite conversations, such as the oil production policy. Because of this, the state does not aim for higher than 50 to 55% reduction in climate emissions. And there is talk about buying quotas to avoid implementing too many measures at home. Most local and regional policy is much more ambitious. Most regions and municipalities see the national goals as a lower baseline. We can't go below that. And they form their own climate policy and goals based on the Paris Agreement and based on what is important for their local area, what type of industry they have, if they have much agriculture or maybe fisheries, what type of transport systems, but also they have to look at how eager the citizens are for change. The CCAPs, the climate and energy plans, have to be made in dialogue with all the pillars of the pentahelix: the inhabitants, the industry, the NGOs, the academic sector, and both their own and neighboring municipalities and regions. This means that the climate and energy plans will look very different, include different things, and the targets will vary. But as mentioned, we try not to go below 50% reduction. This is a pie chart showing the emissions for Østfold, the southernmost region. And here you see that transport is about half the emissions. But there is also a lot of industry and agriculture. And in the ideal world, we should aim for 100% of reduction of CO2 emissions. It is theoretically possible to remove all emissions from transport and energy, but we need some more time for the industry, and in the agricultural sector, the biological emissions are very difficult to handle. We do not want to import all our food to Norway, but grow more ourselves. Less than 3% of our land mass is suitable for growing vegetables or grains, and the rest is basically mountains and snow. Grazing animals, such as cows, sheep, and reindeer, can produce food in the north, but they do emit methane. So we are discussing both how can we reduce emissions from agriculture and how can we store more carbon in the soil, in the grazable areas, in the forest, and in seaweed. Some municipalities and regions set goals where they include carbon storage and thereby reach 100% net emissions. Viken has both. We have a very challenging 80% reduction goal, and this means that everything but the agriculture has to reach zero. This is the energy in Viken. We have an energy dashboard that we have made for all the municipalities in Norway. Viken uses about 19 terawatt hours of electricity, but we produce 15 from hydropower, and we have a little bit of wind power. So the only 4 terawatt hours that we don't produce from renewable sources within Viken, the municipalities and region owns hydropower plants other places in Norway. So our focus is very clearly on the fossil fuels. These are our energy numbers from 2018. And already then you can see that the oil products, the green down here, most of that went to transport. And after the fossil heating ban was implemented in 2020, all this energy for heating for buildings is almost gone. So we have transport, machines, and industries that still use fossil fuels. And it will be very challenging to replace the 13 terawatt hours that this includes. And it must be done with a combination of measures. We would like to increase bioenergy and district heating and reduce electricity consumption. In that way, we can liberate much of the electricity we need for transport and industry. But we're also aiming to produce more electricity through upgrading old hydropower plants and through solar energy. Wind has a lot of production potential, but it's full of conflict. We have in Viken set new goals just before Christmas, and we are currently in the beginning of a planning process where we are moving from these 2 regional CCAPs to 1. And we are looking at an 80% reduction of scope 1 and some scope 2 emissions. But we also have set ambitions for targeting scope 3, the reduction of footprint in the goods and services we buy. And we have goals focusing on climate adaptations. We have had a lot of discussions with our municipalities on how they should structure their CCAPs. Most are either separating the adaptation measures into a risk and vulnerability plan and only focusing on mitigation in the CCAP. Or they are making integrated larger plans covering both adaptation, mitigation, and other topics, such as biodiversity, transport, aerial planning, etc. I've even seen some of the smaller municipalities that have one annual plan covering everything. And as long as everything is covered, all of these ways can work. But I must admit I've seen few plans that have managed to successfully integrate both biodiversity and climate into one plan. It often gets quite fluffy and not very clear. So our CCAPs, our climate plans, are longer term, up to 10 years, and we need annual action plans that we connect to the municipal budgets to ensure we implement enough measures to reach the targets. So this is an example of a climate budget that's integrated into the fiscal budget. And you can see in Norwegian how they've set different targets, making a bike and walking path, using electric bikes in the municipal service, how much this will cost each year, and how much they will reduce their emissions. We also do not include reduction in energy into the CO2 emissions because our energy is from hydropower. So then if we did that, we would only use time arguing of the emission factor of hydropower. So we set CO2 emission goals and gigawatt hour emission goals. To implement measures is, of course, the most important part of it all. We make our CCAPs through cooperation between the municipalities and between the municipalities and the region. And we implement them the same way. We have established partnerships with the municipalities where we share the cost of a wide range of projects. We have partnerships with the agricultural sector where we provide training in energy efficient tractor driving, workshops on establishing solar energy on your barn, and much more. And we have a Pentahelix task force partnership with a steadily increasing number of businesses, NGOs and groups representing the citizens, academic partners, and representatives from the local, regional, and national authorities. All of these partnerships are active in different projects, both with national and European funding. And some of the most successful currently, in addition to the Pentahelix projects, are a project where we let municipalities borrow fossil-free heavy vehicles and machines and test them. I will leave a link in the chat where you can go and look at the machines. Most of the text is in Norwegian, but if you click on the links, you will find technical details and photos and often links to English descriptions. So you can see many of the fossil-free machines. And we would be very happy if any of you know of any fossil-free machines that we don't know, so we can add these to the database and maybe get hold of them. If you see these people, in this truck. There's a biomethane truck, and they're testing it for a wastewater project. We also have a project where we assist municipalities in green public procurement. The electric taxi here is used for school transports. And this electric digger has the mayor of Fredrikstad sitting very happily in it. It's been used for a road project. And we have a project where we let people borrow electric bikes at the library, and a different one where we repair children's bikes at schools. So, all of this is based on a philosophy that it's easier to change people's actions than to change their attitude. And that if you change the action of someone, they will change their attitude. That was very short from Norway. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Guri. It was really good. I think very fruitful for our audience to hear this experience. And I would like to have some questions actually in chat room. Guri, if you have a time, the question about regional plan, CCAP, I guess it's about CCAP regional plan. Is it made by administration, regional administration itself, or are you outsourcing and looking for some experts to do this work?
We have been doing these CCAPs for many years, and in the beginning we needed a lot of help from outside experts. But now we have found that if we pool the resources from different municipalities and regions, then we are able to do a lot of it ourselves. Mm-hmm. Of course, we have to buy some reports, some number crunching has to be done by experts, but we try to do as much as possible ourselves. Unfortunately, we do not have energy agencies in Norway. Mm-hmm. This is something we really miss having. So we have to do some of that role too ourselves.
Okay. And one more question. This is about EU climate directives, and what extent these directives, Norway are bound of these directives. Are they binding for Norway actually?
It's a complex question because theoretically we can say no. In reality, we are implementing more of them than the rest of Europe. Mm-hmm. So it's the Norwegian mentality. We need to be able to say no, but we don't say no in reality.
Okay. One of our audience is writing really impressive performance. So Guri, very good. And question, what are the requirements on CO2 footprint calculations? Is it mandatory? Or do you outsource this service or do it by yourself? This is about CO2 footprint.
Scope 1 is mandatory.
Okay.
We have to do it. And scope 2, well, the energy part of it is mandatory, but we do not have to transfer it from gigawatt hours to CO2. But we have, since we already did the calculation for gigawatt hours, then we usually do some estimations. Scope 3 is not mandatory, but the municipalities and the regions see a need of it. So we are trying to force the national authorities to help us do it, and maybe also make it mandatory. But this is a need that is felt on the local and regional level that the national authorities have not gotten to yet.
And one more question, which measures in Norway are considered to be the most effective in terms of CO2 reduction?
Since our energy is, electricity is so much based on renewable, it is the transport sector. Without doubt, it's the transport sector. So we have to do very strong measures there. everything from private cars to trucks, airplanes, boats, and machineries. But as I mentioned, the sector that we know is most difficult has to be targeted early because it will take so long time to change, is the agricultural sector.
Right.
So
And
the
Guri, do you?
fastest.
Yeah. I see. Guri, and do you have a car?
Yes.
Fossil fueled or electricity?
No, of course it's electric.
Okay. Good to hear, actually. And it's not so expensive as to if you want to buy fossil fueled car, you have to pay big taxes.
Yes,
Right?
the electric cars are not very different in price compared to other countries. It's just that our fossil cars have more than 100% tax.
Oh my
So in
God.
comparison, it's extremely expensive to buy fossil fuel car.
Guri, thank you, actually. Thank you for your experience, for your advices, and keep in touch.
Thank
Maybe
you very
someday
much.
here in Latvia or in your country.
Yeah, there is one more question. I just noticed it's Inge here. What about emissions which are emitted by humans? Have you ever had such a question? Do you count that or not?
And not the direct emissions from people moving around, but we have a lot of measures targeting waste, as in wastewater, grey water, black water, all of these. And we have a quite large project on biomethane from human waste. So yes, that is also an issue.
Okay, good. Okay, thank you very much. And we are moving over to Croatia. And as much I understood from your presentation, Tomislav, I saw this presentation before. This is a country where sunce na dlanu. So it's very, very interesting what we can hear about your experience. Tomislav Novosel, project manager, Northwest Croatia Regional Energy Agency. Please, floor is yours, Tomislav.
Yes, let me just quickly share my presentation. So thank you very much for the kind introduction. As you mentioned, my name is Tomislav Novosel, and I work at the Northwest Croatia Regional Energy Agency, which, as the name implies, is a regional energy agency covering the northwest part of Croatia. So that is the city of Zagreb, which is Croatia's capital, plus 3 surrounding counties: Karlovac County, Krapina-Zagorje County, and Zagreb County, which is separate from the city itself. When we talk about energy and climate planning, the first thing that we have to really consider is the scope of the actions that we are actually talking about. So we have on the one side the physical construction of your city, your municipality, or your region. So you have your buildings, your various parts of infrastructure, but you also have a lot of intangible things like your cultural heritage, like your ownership and laws, sociology, and so on. And you also have your economy, your production, distribution, and consumption of energy, green infrastructure, and so on and so forth. So this is a very complex and very multidisciplinary task that is becoming broader and broader as time moves forward. We have heard some very interesting examples from Norway, where they also have to include agriculture into the mix, something that's not really the case for us, since we are more of an urban area. But anyway, the topic is incredibly broad and incredibly complicated. Cities, regions, and regions in Croatia, and as well as the rest of Europe, have certain tools to try to tackle these issues. But the problem is very often the jurisdiction and the actual capacity to mandate actions, plans, and measures. So what are the key actions or key tools that cities and regions usually have? So on the one hand, these are the SECAPs, or the Sustainable Energy and Climate Action Plans, already mentioned, which basically set up the baseline, the activities, and the targets for the covered area. However, their key problem and the key barrier stopping them from becoming the tools that we would all want them to be is basically that they are voluntary. So you don't have to do a SECAP if you don't want to, and even worse, if you do it, there's no real penalties if you don't implement them. So they are very comprehensive documents. However, in this regard, they have certain issues. The other key tool that cities and regions have are their spatial plans. Opposed to SECAPs, they are mandatory, and basically what is written inside a spatial plan is law. So spatial plans define the use of zones in certain areas of the city. They also define some restrictions or some obligations when constructing, when expanding, and so on, such as minimum shares of green areas in a certain land plot. However, in most cases, they don't properly take into account energy and climate. They are usually restricted to defining zones and are usually restricted to the physical side of the architecture and the infrastructure of a given city. And this is basically where we come to this issue of planning and implementation. So of course, depending on the structure of your country, is if it is more centralized or more decentralized. In Croatia, we are very, very centralized. Usually there's a lot of tools to plan things. However, the implementation side lacks. And the key reasons for this are, on the first hand, very often the inability to set mandatory goals. And on the other hand, there is, of course, the issue of finance. And I will now try to briefly present a couple of measures that we have started implementing in cities to try and combat both sides. So just first to show some negative examples of what happens with improper planning. So this is a picture of a spatial plan of one of our cities within the scope of our operation. And here you can see the energy layer of their spatial plan. So what you see here is with green, the gas lines, and with red, the district heating lines. And unfortunately, as you can see here, there's a lot of correlation between these two. So you can see a lot of places that have both gas and district heating, which is highly inefficient, and due to the unfortunate pricing structure in Croatia, this basically favors natural gas. And even worse, in light yellow, so here you can also see plans to expand gas grids more, the gas grids more than you can see plans to expand the district heating grids. So because of this mismatch in planning, there's a very high share of natural gas usage, even in cities that do have district heating systems. And on the other hand, since climate planning is still very much in its infancy in Croatia, and I would dare to say most of Europe, a variety of negative climate effects are still very prevalent in our cities. Here you can see a surface heat map within one of our city blocks here in the city of Zagreb. And on the left, you can see a map showing the spatial distribution of the surface temperature. And on the right, you can see the block that this image has been taken from. And you can clearly see a difference of over 4 degrees Celsius at the same exact moment in places that are basically just concrete and buildings, compared to places that actually have some green infrastructure. So basically here you can see in some kind of a park, the temperature was around 24 degrees, while here where there's no trees, no green coverage, anything, the temperature is 28. And this is also something that spatial planning doesn't really take into account properly. So the first thing that we have started doing and are now piloting in the city of Karlovac in Croatia is to try and create our country's first green spatial plan. So the principal idea here is to properly and holistically integrate energy and climate measures directly into the city's spatial plan. And just also to clarify, spatial plans come in a variety of levels. So there's regional ones, city ones, urban ones, and special ones that basically cover just maybe a very small part of the city. So it's very important when such measures are being integrated, that they are properly integrated on all levels and correlated between all levels. And what will we provide in this case? So we will provide proper measures that need to be implemented, definitions on how and where these measures should be implemented, as well as the spatial distributions of these measures. So this can range from, for example, setting a above standard of energy efficiency for a certain part of the city. It can be an outright ban for the use of fossil fuels in heating, for example. This can be a mandatory implementation of green infrastructure, such as green facades, or maybe even simply trees next to roads or on parking places, and so on and so forth. So the primary issue here, the primary driver here is that spatial plans, as I said, are mandatory. So basically, any measure that comes into it from a SECAP or any other source is a law, and it cannot simply be ignored, such as action plans and so on can. And then there's the green infrastructure that I've mentioned. So as you've maybe heard, the city of Zagreb has been struck by a devastating earthquake, or actually a series of earthquakes that have caused severe damage to the city center. And as Churchill said, don't ever leave a good crisis unused. We are now, the city is now planning a very ambitious strategy to rebuild this city center. So this will include both the energy efficiency of the buildings. It will include new sources of energy production, but it will also include green infrastructure. And this is something that can also be a very nice addition to any spatial plan. So basically clear outlines of where and which types of green infrastructures should be used. So here you can see that same exact block that I've showed you, a couple of slides ago. And basically, this is a draft plan to slowly transform it into a proper green oasis within the city itself, and with that also combat a lot of the climate issues that we've seen. So aside from planning, a huge issue for the implementation of energy and climate measures is, of course, finance. I don't know the exact situation in all of the countries that are present here, but a huge issue that a lot of Croatian cities have is public debt. So most cities are already indebted up to the level that they can take debt. So it's very difficult to accumulate enough resources to invest in high impact measures. And the way around this, and the most efficient way around this, is the use of private capital. However, it's very often problematic to attract public investors into energy efficiency projects, especially in Croatia, due to the low prices of energy. Energy is still very often a social category, especially in Eastern Europe, so the prices are kept artificially low, and the realistic payback periods on a lot of energy efficiency measures can be 15, 20, even 25 years. Electricity production, on the other hand, and energy production, on the other hand, is a different topic. So here you can see an example of a power purchase project, power purchase agreement project that we have facilitated in the city of Zabok, and this is specifically a large PV power plant that was constructed on the hospital's roof through a power purchase agreement contract. So the key driver here was basically to attract a private investor to install a PV plant on the hospital's roof. And using that PV plant, the private investor sells electricity to the hospital at a rate 10% lower than they would buy electricity from the grid. And after the contracts end, the hospital becomes the owner of the PV plant. The payback period for the private investor is between 5 and 7 years, so they still have a fairly decent margin to actually make profit. And the best thing is that the municipality or the public partner in this process does not have to pay anything up front, and basically doesn't have to invest any of its money, and therefore doesn't have to take up any debt. The same process can also function for heat through a heat supply contract. So this is another project being implemented in a school in our region, where basically through a very similar model, a fuel oil boiler has been changed, has been replaced by a wood chip boiler. The issue here is the prices of heat are fairly low. The investment into a wood chip boiler is fairly high, so this project did rely on some subsidies. However, it functions on a very similar model to the one that I've mentioned, where basically the public side, the municipality doesn't have to invest any of its money. No additional debt is incurred, and they still receive a renewable source of heating. And just to conclude, since my time is running out, just a couple of lessons that we have learned throughout the last few years. So the way forward, at least for us, is to integrate energy and climate directly into spatial planning. You can see a lot of examples of this happening across Europe. Probably the most prominent and currently most famous example would be Vienna with its climate neutral zones, in which they have forbid the use of fossil fuels, basically banning, for heating, basically banning natural gas. It is very important to build up capacity within the local and regional authorities, and especially to enable them to use existing tools, such as the aforementioned spatial plans for climate and energy purposes. It is also very important to have a certain flexibility when defining energy and climate policies. So as I mentioned, Croatia is a very centralized country, and we have this issue of basically our targets coming to the cities top down, without taking into account the local resources and the local potentials, and with that making the whole process, of course, far less effective. And finally, even though a lot of people are trying to make it out to be, climate protection is not really a barrier, it is actually a driver for innovation. So innovation in climate and innovation in energy can lead to new forms of industry. It can lead to higher competition in the existing ones, and it can be a potential source of revenue for a lot of actors within the overall market. And that is how things should be presented. So this is all from me. Thank you very much for the attention. And if you have any questions, let me know.
Tomislav, thank you very much. Really great. You mentioned actually this it's a problem to attract private money to these projects because of energy prices in Croatia. But however, you have a platform connecting investors and owners of facilities. How it works? What's the motivation of private owners to come and do this business?
So there are certain types of investments that are currently very economically feasible, primarily PV. So rooftop PV is very it has a fairly quick payback period, even in our continental parts. It's usually 5 to 7 years. On the other hand, there is an option to utilize some existing subsidies that can then help bridge the gap between, to bridge the gap to make the project actually financially viable. So there is some gymnastics that you need to do here, but there are options to actually make this thing profitable.
Mhm. And there's a question where it's planned to dispose or utilize the used solar batteries.
Yeah, so there is still, so okay, I understand the issue, but in Croatia we still have a fairly low rate of intermittent energy supply. So there isn't a lot of solar and not a lot of wind. So we still don't really have an issue of our market being saturated. So most of the energy produced is being sold to the grid or being used on site. Some batteries are being installed. So, for example, we have an office very close to this hospital. It's actually a refurbished mansion. And on it, we are now in the process of installing PV and a battery. However, that's not usually how people go about it, because the battery increases the costs and electricity is still fairly cheap. So it's usually more economical to just sell the excess off into the grid.
I see. And last one, I guess, question, which measures in Croatia are considered the most effective for reduction of CO2 emissions? The measures which are giving the biggest impact?
So unlike Norway, in Croatia, the most impactful sector is buildings. So buildings are usually between 60 and 80% of our emissions. Transport is maybe, so public lighting is about 5 and the rest is then transport, depends on the size of the municipality. So it's absolutely building energy efficiency. The issue is that those are also the most expensive projects and the slowest projects to implement. But it's anything related to building energy efficiency.
Tomislav, great. Thank you very much. And you make a perfect bridge to our next presenter, actually. He's going to speak about buildings, about Hruščovkas, how we called it in Baltic states, or actually in former Soviet Union. Martin Kikas, Director of Tartu Energy Agency, Estonia. We are going to our northern neighbors. Martin, floor is yours. Hi.
Thank you. Thank you for the introduction as well, and I'm very thankful to have opportunity to make a presentation in here in this conference seminar, and of course nice greetings to our cooperation partners, to Zemgale Regional Energy Agency as well. So yeah, I'm Martin Kikas from Tartu Regional Energy Agency, and I would like to make presentation about one success story. At least it's a success story of one renovation case study in Tartu, and as we hope, it's like beginning of the road, which we have to manage, as the previous presenter told about, that the buildings are very energy consumed. So it is true, and this problem is in Tartu and in Estonia as well. So let's take a look what we have done in Tartu. So first of all, Tartu has on development phase. Actually, it's already developed, and in March, in next month, with couple of weeks, it will be in the city council for approval. It was quite long, half and a year long public presentations about the new Tartu Energy and Climate Action Plan called Tartu Energy 2030. And the main goal is to be carbon neutral in 2015, and in the midterm to reduce CO2 emissions in the city of Tartu by 40%. It's a plan, and as I told, after 2 weeks it will be in the city council. The challenge is, as you see, it's emissions in Tartu. 2010, when we started the baseline of the emissions, was 541,000 tons of CO2. We'd like to get in 300,000 till 2030, but as you see on the slide, for 2017, the consumption, mostly energy, mostly power consumption, was rise, and that's why the coal is more challenging. And by sectors, it's as you see on the slide, the business sector is and it's include all private buildings owned, not residential buildings. Residential is a second sector which need to be focused, and my presentation is focusing to the residential sector, and I show some quite successful story. But what to do with the biggest one? The city of Tartu has written in this strategy. They have plan, and it's already started, to make agreements with businesses, organizations, and actors in city to take some of responsibility to reduce emissions on the territory of Tartu. So agreement between city government and businesses, that businesses take some goals to reduce emissions, and it's only way to reduce overall and total emissions on city territory. So, but about this agreement thing, I can speak maybe the next time, but today we will focus to the residential sector and the housing stock. So renovation is not going very fast in Estonia and in Tartu as well. Tartu is maybe on the second fastest city on renovation progress, but anyway, it's not going fast as we liked, and that's why we had a demo project, and what about that's project I will tell. But in overall, city of Tartu, in city of Tartu, we have close to 1,000 multi-apartment buildings. And in this slide, you see the renovation progress by years of multi-apartment buildings. We have national support grant for renovation, and today it's provide 30% of costs on renovation of multi-apartment buildings, and from last year they started for single family houses as well. So we have both grants on the table, and it's a little bit supports, but it's not enough, and that's why maybe about the cost in Estonia, we have problem with money as always on residential sector. So it's last year and the average cost of renovations, but usually when grant will be launched and announced on publicly, and this makes the market very let's say for businesses, businesses see the opportunity, especially construction companies, and the prices of renovation going a little bit increasing a little bit. So it's always a problem, and our government and the Credex announced that more stable grants, because previously we have yearly grants. Every year they announce that grants will be available, but now they like to announce that the grant will be available 4 or 5 years, so it will be a little bit make market more stable, and we hope that the prices of renovation will be stable as well. But it's a one, let's say, barrier or one problem on this movement. But anyway, to make renovation more attractive, City of Tartu was part of the project Horizon 2020 called Smart and City. It's finalizing in this year, and there was many of actions, and I focused the action where we was as an agency was a partner, and our task was to motivate and to guide the buildings and building associations for renovation, and to make renovation much more ambitious requirements as it required by national government or CREDEX, who is providing grants in national grants. So, but yeah, and then with this project we had a task to renovate 39,000 square meter of living area. It was in average 22 buildings, and we made I would say like procurement, because in central city center we had almost 40 buildings on Khrushchevka style. You know Khrushchevka, I assume, because it's very a lot of buildings built in 70s and even maybe 60s, and they are like Khrushchevka style. Afterwards, I will show the picture as well. So we took Khrushchevkas at a very lot of buildings we have such kind of, and the other hand, it was very challenging because they are very old, and maybe construction quality was always not the best. So it's a most challenging type of buildings to handle, and that's why we called it and we started with let's say case study or case Khrushchevkas to Smartovkas. In this slide you can see national requirements. When you get CREDEX support scheme, it's called CREDEX requirements and smart and city requirements. So energy performance need to be close to 150 by national. It's a national energy performance minimum as well, and class C. But we took our goal to build close to 90 kilowatt hours per square meter and class A. Of course, better windows, little bit better wall insulation, and as obligatory, we installed PV panels to every rooftop of these buildings. Then about ventilation, the national requirements are required to get to see it's need to be ventilation with heat recovery, but we took a step further even. We suggested ventilation with heat recovery on demand based, and the CO2 is the measure at the KPI, which will be manage or control the ventilation. And we installed the, of course, smart home solution, and to make these buildings, old Khrushchevkas, make more attractive, we put in every building work art as well on exterior walls. So city looks more nicer now as it was. And of course, the very important thing is training of residents, how to use a new how to live in new situation building, and on energy performance, energy efficiency in general as well. It's very important to training residents as well. So, and it's an overview. Altogether 17 buildings. As I told, we have target 20 buildings, but a couple of buildings left in our program. But anyway, we achieved 32,000 square meters. We built more than 600 kilowatts PV panels. The heat reduction was in average 1/3, and the power consumption was decreased at least 20-25% as well. All these buildings was had district heating in previously, but the hot water was provided by gas or by electrical boilers, and they didn't have mostly that. I think you understand that the indoor climate was not very well in every building. So we improved the indoor climate quite a lot, because in Estonia we have requirements to get let's say second class of indoor climate, to get the level of second class. So it's quite ambitious to achieve for buildings. And that our agency was like technical consultant to these buildings to make technical design and to had a look on building quality as well. So about the funding of these, in generally they use almost half was different kind of grants, credit supports, national support scheme, and from these project Smart and City grant, and 49% was co-financing by housing association itself. So this is I will show you a couple of examples. This is the best one, and the second is it's average or even a little bit worst, but this is the best one because they didn't have balconies, and they even put the balconies. And as you see, there is a piece of art as well, but on energy efficiency they get quite good results. And in 2018, before renovation, there is data. You can see this slide. So they reduced in every type of energy, and they produced quite a lot of energy to the network. But the only thing that need to be improved in future is how to consume more power energy which are generated in rooftop, because today, as you can see on the bottom, they almost 90% they selling to the grid. Of course, they will get the money for that, but anyway, it's more, let's say, profitable to consume it by itself. So now they are thinking about how to increase the share of energy which will be used by themselves. And the second example, TG8, it's the biggest one, 60 apartments, and today it's look like this, and they get quite good data as well. They both buildings are on the class A, and And as you can see, they are reduced energy consumption quite a lot. And again, here is the challenge, how to use generated electricity much more as they using today. Here is a little bit better share, but anyway, it's not good enough. And there is some let's say solutions how to do it. So as I told, we installed smart home solution. It's not something very fancy. It's quite basic. You can control temperature. You can control a little bit ventilation, and you have consumption data on running consumption data and comparing with last month. Do you have minus or do you have plus with last month consumption? So it's very basic, but anyway, it's something, and it keeps for them inhabitants, residents who like to be informed and who like to control consumption, so they can do it. And that's why it's good. But this smart home solution was installed to every apartment, and we provided training how to use it, and of course we provide many of trainings how to live in these conditions. So what we have learned, it becomes very important to prior in-depth planning. It needs to be very clearly discussed, and sometimes very heavily, and it's always very hot discussions between residents what to do with our building. But anyway, you need to somehow to renovate, and that's why technical consultations are very good if they have some technical persons who help them to understand how to achieve indoor climate, good indoor climate in apartments, how to achieve energy efficiency, and how to make our building to look nice. So anyway, there in every part you need some outsourced knowledge in most of cases, of course, but in most of cases, and that is makes very important just pre renovation consultations and pre-renovation planning. Of course, technical in Estonia we have in a good hands if we looking on the CREDEX grant, because if you have technical design already, then technical design will be expertised by CREDEX, and it will avoid big mistakes on design phase already. And of course, if you have a lot of money in the market, the quality of work will be decreasing. I can say honestly, because a lot of companies like to go into the, let's say, easy money, because a lot of money on the renovation. So new companies are coming, and in one hand, it's pushed the prices up, and the other hand, quality will be lower. But it's not, of course, not a problem of building itself. It's a problem national wide to avoid these happenings. And of course, what most of buildings usually forgot, it's later setup of tuning of technical side, ventilation and heating, and maintenance, of course. And what we learned very much, it's training of residents, and it's completely important, these last two things. Later tuning and set up technical parts and training of residents. So to conclusion, doesn't matter how looks your building, is it well renovated or not, but consumption, it's up to people. It's we all, as a people, as a persons, we consume something, and consumed energy and emissions is up to us mostly. So thank you for attention, and I'm open for questions.
Martin, thank you. We can see that a good job is done in Tartu. So far, renovating these buildings, we have some kind very similar buildings here in Latvia, and so without hesitation, questions. Who is the main stakeholder? Who starts the process? The residents, municipality, or someone else?
This process is started. You mean these Hrushevka to Smartovkas? It started by municipality and our agency. Because our agency, goal of our agency and aim our agency to help citizens to improve energy situation. Doesn't matter is it efficiency or renewables generation, but yeah. And afterwards we pick up these buildings, and to be part, it was voluntary to buildings, because we had much more buildings. But we raised the question who like to be part, and these buildings who had a motivation and wish to be part, they get this possibility.
You mean building by majority of residents, 2/3 of
Yes.
residents?
Yes.
Majority.
Yes.
You have
Yeah,
a
majority.
You need
Yeah.
a majority.
Yeah. In every multi-apartment building, we have a building association as a legal body, and the majority is need to be devoted to go to renovation. And of course, you need a majority to take this action happen.
How long is an average payback period of renovation of a multi-apartment building? Payback period.
Payback period is quite high, quite long, I can say. In Tallinn Technical University make calculations that economically visible deep renovation is if you calculate 30 years. So if it's going more than 30 years, it's maybe the best, not best technical solution. But yeah.
It's approximately. Okay, one more question. What is the opinion in Estonia about placing PV panels on 50, 60-year-old buildings? Maybe just relatively new buildings would be better, safer in terms of additional loads.
Yeah, of course. For new buildings, it's okay. But we can say that if you make deep renovation, and this deep renovation will be done for 50 years. For 50 years. So, and as I told, economically visible is deep renovation for 30 years. So we have 50 years life age of building. We have 30 years of economically visible renovation, and PV panels lifetime is close 20 years, same closely like a roof. So only thing you need to have new roof. If your roof is quite okay and will last at least 20, 25 years, it's no problem to put PV panels to the rooftop.
Okay, I see. Thank you. And I have more questions about Estonia's goals in general. How do you assess Estonia's chances of achieving this EU climate neutrality targets in the 2050 building sector by seeing the financial resources allocated to it? And okay, this one question. Let's go.
Okay, yeah. Our government prepared strategy of building renovation stock, as every country made to European Commission, and there was shown that 1/4, 25% of buildings today existing building in different kind will be demolished or not renovated. half of these building stock what we have today will be need to be renovated to achieve this goal, need to be renovated anyway. So now our government is up to this strategy, trying to find resources, and first actions was taken, and we hope that 350 millions will be available for renovation in common years.
I see.
In a couple of next years maybe.
And one more question. And do you see real opportunities to increase energy efficiency by introducing the use of renewable energy sources in the energy management of buildings, solar, wind, etc.?
Yes. The question is how big is this share and how big is the effect? But definitely yes. Definitely yes.
Mm-hmm. And best greetings and best wishes to my friends of Tartu from Raitis, Zemgale Planning Regional Team.
Hello, Raitis.
And one more question. Which measures in Estonia are considered the most effective for CO2 reduction? The measures which give the biggest impact to your mind?
In national wide, I assume.
Yeah.
Our electricity. Yeah, as you know, our electricity is very CO2 intensive. Today we have 1 megawatt hour emits 700 kilograms CO2. 3 years ago it was 1 megawatt hour, 1 ton. Today we have 0.7 tons. We going slowly to reduce it, but definitely it's the most challenging sector in Estonia to reduce CO2 emissions. How to deal with oil shale industry and oil shale energy industry.
I see, Martin. Thank you very much. I guess it was the good question, great answers, and impressive presentation. Thank you, Martin. I would like to thank you, Guri, Tomislav as well. And I would like to invite to applause to our foreign friends taking part in this webinar. If it works, can we just try to make applause? I don't know if you're here. I hear myself at least.
Thank you.
Thank you.
But thank you very much and good luck and see you soon.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye, Tomislav. Bye, Martin.